Okay, so let's go ahead and get back into our coverage over Ultimate Spider-Man with issue number 13. Now, here's the thing, because I was going to wait to cover issue number 13 and wait to cover it alongside with issue number 14, but I kept hearing this rumor that Venom was in Ultimate Spider-Man 13. I'm like, wait, Venom is here? I have not read the book yet, but that seems wild and crazy that Hickman would just go ahead and give us Venom just like that. Because for me personally, with Hickman, I don't think he would give us Venom that easily. I feel like he would do a whole lot more with that kind of character. So when I sat down, read issue number 13, to only find out that, hey, we have a new Spider-Man. The new Spider-Man is Richard Parker, the son of Peter Parker, and right now he's wearing the black suit. And I'm kind of like, that's not really Venom for me in this Ultimate universe. Now, I could be wrong. This could be Hickman's Venom, but again, I don't feel like it is. I feel like we're going to get an actual Ultimate Venom down the road, or possibly just a Carnage. Now, you're probably wondering, how in the world is Richard Parker being Spider-Man right now? Let's not forget, when it came to Peter Parker and also Harry Osborn, when they were trying their best to learn more about their suits, they went over to Doc Ock. Now, when it came to Doc Ock, he was able to explain a lot of different things about their suit. But one of the biggest things was the AI system. The whole idea that there's an AI inside there to kind of help them out in the field. Now, when it came to Harry Osborn, he made his AI system be more like his father, Norman Osborn. But when it came to Peter Parker, it was more of like, no, I want my AI to be just like me. Now, after a while, you have Peter kind of abandon his high-tech suit. And so right now, it's Richard Parker wearing that suit right now that has the built-in AI system that's acting and thinking just like Peter Parker. And so right now for Richard Parker, as long as he wears that Spider-Man suit, he can now be the new Spider-Man, while Peter Parker and Harry Osborn is currently missing. Because remember, we had learned at the very end of issue number 12 that our two characters have been kidnapped by the Sinister Six, really by Kraven. In matter of fact, we jump over to Kraven, and when we do, we kind of pick up with the whole idea of what is the Savage Land like in this reality. Now, for me personally, I kind of love the idea of the Savage Land being right under Staten Island instead of being right in the middle of Antarctica. Now, we also learn here the Savage Land belongs to the Mole Man. Now, he was only able to get the Savage Land because of the Kingpin. Now for Kraven, he does use the land as a way to kind of hunt down different targets that he had brought over into this area. So like dinosaurs or other kind of wild animals. But apparently he's getting ready to hunt down Harry Osborn and also Peter Parker in this land. Now when it comes to Kraven and also Mole Man, this was supposed to be a private meeting between the two characters, but unfortunately they are then confronted by Mysterio. Now, this is not Mysterio trying to spoil the plans of Kraven and also Mole Man. Instead, it's Mysterio kind of like, listen, the only thing I want to do is to be able to meet Peter Parker and also Harry Osborn and to kind of figure out what you have learned about them, because they are technically enemies of the Kingpin. Now, it's really more of Kraven kind of telling us that he had kept Peter Parker and also Harry Osborn for a good period of time to kind of learn everything about them. Now, in that period of time, he has done a lot of different things to them as a way to kind of figure out what kind of people they are. Now, he's also telling us that it was very easy to figure out who was the Green Goblin. It was Harry Osborn. It did not take him that long to kind of follow the clues to learn who was the Green Goblin. But for Peter Parker, he had to do a tad bit more work. But either way, he still figured out it was Peter Parker. Now, for Kraven, what he's going to do now is really more of begin to hunt down both Harry Osborn and also Peter in the Savage Land. Now, let's not forget that for Peter and Harry, they have been kidnapped 2 months ago. And so right now, our two characters, they're kind of completely drained. But right now, is Kraven wondering if they still have the ability to overcome him in the middle of the hunt. And so you then have Kraven go ahead and drop our heroes into the Savage Land. Now, I kind of want to point out on how Peter Parker is acting. Here's the reason why, because for Peter Parker, this is the man who now been pushed to the edge. And he now knows that the only way to save his family is for him to survive. Kraven told him, like, hey, if you die, then most likely your family is going to die. But if you are able to defeat me, then most likely your family still has a chance to live on. And so it's Peter Parker right now, a man who is pushed to the edge saying, I will fight against anything, anyone to be able to save the life of my family, to protect them from this crazy man known as Kraven. Now, to close on today's video, we do jump back over to Richard Parker. Now, when we do, it's really more of Richard Parker just still being out there as the new Spider-Man with the, AI suit in the black suit. But then he's confronted by Black Cat. Now, for Black Cat, she believes that this is the same Spider-Man who had fought against her father, who seriously injured her father. But this is not Peter Parker. And honestly, it was Harry Osborn kind of seriously hurt her father. But either way, for Black Cat, she now wants to have a conversation with this Spider-Man about what happened to her father. Okay, so technically we are behind when it comes to our coverage over the Ultimate Marvel Universe. I kind of felt bad that I hadn't really sat down and covered Absolute Comics for DC or Ultimate Comics for Marvel. So my goal is for me to get back into the picture of covering both realities, because both realities for me have been beautiful, especially when it comes to Ultimate Spider-Man for the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, with that being said, this issue alone really does show like what happens when you push Peter Parker to the edge. Like, this man shows us like no matter what, if you cross that line, Peter is going to beat you down. But we also have to remember what happened in the previous issue. And let me explain. So in the previous issue, we had learned that technically Peter and also Harry have been kidnapped by Kraven. Now, when it came to Mary Jane and Gwen, they didn't know at first. And matter of fact, you had the AI suit that was created by Tony Stark pretend to be Peter Parker on Christmas. But that was when you had Mary Jane find out, thanks to Gwen, that Peter and Harry are both missing. They've been kidnapped. And so after that, you didn't have the AI suit kind of be a spider suit for Richard Parker, because with Peter now missing, there's no Spider-Man out there. So now you have Richard trying to pick up where his father had left off at technically. Now, when it came to Richard being Spider-Man, I guess 2.0 or Black Suit Spider-Man, he ran into Black Cat. Now, for Black Cat, Felicia in this reality, she's a young girl, only like 17 years old, and that's really it. But her father was the original Black Cat, who was part of the Sinister Six. Now, he was defeated by Peter and Harry, and unfortunately got seriously injured. And so with them now being off the table, she now has to take her father's place. But the thing is, when she finds Richard, she believes Richard is Peter, the guy who had apparently hurt her father. Come to find out, no, she has the wrong Spider-Man. But at the same time, it does seem like these two characters are now going to become friends, because now I understand they should not be fighting against one another. But also for Felicia, she kind of hates the idea of being a supervillain. But as we switch over to Peter and also Harry, they're still in the Savage Land. Now remember, the Savage Land is technically underneath New York, but it's the home of the Mole Man. Now, when it comes to Peter and Harry, they're being hunted down by Kraven, and their main goal right now is to survive, but also find a way to escape the Savage Land or possibly take down Kraven, which of course would lead into them finding a way out of the Savage Land. Now, for Peter Parker, we begin to see him kind of understand that he has a spider sense. And here's the reason why, because when it comes to Peter and Harry, as they're making their way through the Savage Land, you have Kraven trying to snipe them, but you have Peter being able to kind of dodge those bullets. And it's him kind of realizing that he has this other sense that kind of kicks in when he is in danger. And so now this is Peter kind of getting a better idea of he has a spider sense. But while you have Peter and Harry trying to get away from Kraven, they run into the Mole Man. Now, the Mole Man, again, is the owner of the Savage Land. This is his place. And he hates the idea of Kraven kind of forcing himself into his home, into his area. And so you have Peter and Harry kind of get the idea that the Mole Man wants to help out. Now, for our heroes, they're very confused on the reason why Mole Man wants to help out our heroes take down Kraven, because if he does, technically, he'll then be portraying the Kingpin. The Sinister Six works for the Kingpin, but you have Mole Man say, listen, the Kingpin has no idea what Kraven is currently doing. And also, you heroes do not need to know why I'm doing this for. Just know I'm trying to help you guys. Now, the idea of the help that Mole Man is trying to give comes from the idea of the Moloids, creatures that Mole Man uses in his underground home, or the Savage Land. Now, once you have Peter and Harry leave, you have Mysterio appear. Now, for me, out of all the different members of the Sinister Six, Mysterio is the coolest and the most interesting character of them all, because I want to know his origin. He's so, pun intended, mysterious here. Now, for Mole Man, he does tell Mysterio, like, hey, I should have never told you that Kraven was here. Kind of getting the idea that Mysterio and also Mole Man has something going on with Kraven, like some bad blood. Now, for Mysterio, he tells Mole Man, no, what you did was the right thing. And then Mole Man walks away. Well, really, Mole Man continues to talk to Mysterio with his back turned. When he turns around, Mysterio is gone. We do transition back over to Richard and Felicia, and mind you guys, when it comes to Felicia, she is 17 years old, and Richard is 15 years old, so we're kind of getting the idea of these two characters being able to build a bond with one another, a friendship, possibly more than a friendship, who knows? Actually, I think she's 16. Either way, we're seeing the two characters being able to talk to one another, and you have Felicia kind of tell Richard her entire origin story. Now, for Richard, he does not tell her anything at all about his origin nor his father's. Now, as we get back over to Peter and Harry, you have the two characters talking to one another about their game plan on how they are going to escape the Savage Land. Now, while they're talking, for Peter, his main goal at the moment is to just get back to his family, because he now knows that his enemies know everything about him, his wife, his kids, and he wants to protect them. But for Harry's really not that concerned, and here's the reason why. Because for Harry, he was working with Otto Octavius when it came to a security system to protect Gwen. If anything happens to him, that system is activated. And so right now, Gwen is perfectly protected. Now, Mary Jane is not. Neither are the kids. And the reason why, because Otto Octavius has no idea that Peter is Spider-Man. So unfortunately, Gwen is protected, but Mary Jane and the kids are not. Now, for Mole Man, he finds the Moloids right now badly beaten. And the reason why? Because of Kraven. Because Kraven had discovered that they can talk. Not all of them, but some of them. And so you had Kraven go out of his way to find at least one of them that could talk to him, to tell him where the tunnels go, kind of helping out Kraven when it comes to bringing down Peter and Harry. And matter of fact, you have Harry and Peter trying their best to get the jump on Kraven. The problem is Kraven is able to get the jump on them. Now, when it comes to Peter and Harry, technically, they were kind of hoping for this. And the reason why, because earlier they had set up traps. one of those traps goes off, and just like that, they now have the edge over Kraven, allowing Peter to actually get close to Kraven, to beat him down, to break all the different weapons he has right now in his arsenal. But once you have Peter being able to beat down on Kraven, you have Harry say, you have to kill him, because if you don't kill him, he will still continue to find you or follow you, go after Mary Jane, the kids. The only way to handle this is to kill him off. And the problem is right now for Peter, he can't do it because Peter is not a killer. And that is Peter's downfall in this story, because you have Kraven pull out a weapon. Now you would think like, okay, cool. Peter's spider sense should kick off right now to protect him because there's now danger. But it doesn't work. And here's the reason why. Because for Kraven, he was not aiming at Peter. He was aiming at Harry. And so yes, Peter got shot, but Kraven shot through Peter to get to Harry and shot Harry right in the head. And so Harry Osborn is officially dead at the moment. Now, with all that being said, you have Peter get very upset and begin to beat down on Kraven over and over and over again. But you didn't have Mysterio appear. Mysterio say, listen, go ahead and leave because I'll take care of him. But right now, you should not stay here. Like, your friends are already dead. You know who's still alive right now? Your family. Go to your family. Be with them. And so you have Peter leave. And this is the first time you have Mary Jane and Peter seeing each other for like months. And so for Mary Jane, she's freaking out. She sees her husband bleeding. She's wondering where in the world has he been at? And you have Peter tell Mary Jane two things. One, Harry is dead. And two, they have to run. Because right now, the Sinister Six, sooner or later, will come after him, come after his family to get to him. And he needs to do everything he can to hopefully protect them. But this, I kind of feel like in every single video, I'm always saying like, okay, guys, we got to do a tad bit of catching up here when it comes to the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And the thing is, every single time I say that, it's technically true. Because for me, I kind of get behind when it comes to covering newer comics. And that's on me. But my goal is to get better at that. But at the same time, we do have a big Ultimate Marvel event coming up very soon. And I want to make sure that I'm ready, but you guys are also ready as well. And so I kind of want to go ahead and beef up the Ultimate Marvel playlist just in case anybody is trying to dive into this brand new universe. And with that being said, we got to pick up with Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 15. Now, with this issue alone is Jonathan Hickman being Jonathan Hickman. And what I mean by that statement is that he gave us Ultimate Sandman, which for me personally is pretty cool. But at the same time, it's him giving us a new character, but putting that new character on the back burner. And Hickman, he will not use that character for a very long time. So unfortunately, yes, we do get Ultimate Sandman, but for like one book, and who knows when we'll ever see him ever again. Now, this issue alone is kind of picking up where the last video had left off at, because remember, right now for the Parkers, they are technically on the run at the moment. And the reason why, because, well, the Sinister Six, who's working for the Kingpin, they know about Peter Parker being Spider-Man. They know that Harry Osborn is the Green Goblin. Well, sorry, he was, because in our last video, we had saw the death of Harry Osborn. But either way, for Peter, he's trying his best to protect his family. Now, he didn't bring Uncle Ben nor Jonah, just Mary Jane and the kids, and that's really it. Now, for Peter and Mary Jane, they're on the run. But for the kids, it's kind of like, no, we're on a vacation. We got an RV. Let's go ahead and use this time as a way to get away from the city. Now, once you do have May Parker wake up, she is confronted by one of their neighbors in a different RV. Now, this neighbor, he begins to ask May like, okay, young girl, what do you have planned for the day? And she tells them all like, hey, you know what? We're going sightseeing. going to see different things in this area. Now, as soon as she does mention one particular area, the guy says, don't go there. And the reason why? Because that area is dangerous. People had disappeared in that area. Now, for Mary Jane, it's her being that supporting wife. And what I mean by that statement is that it's not her saying like, hey, Peter, because of you, our lives are ruined, so you're not allowed to be Spider-Man anymore. Instead, it's her saying like, no, if people are in trouble, if people are disappearing, go out of your way and still be that hero. Go be Spider-Man to figure out what exactly is going on in that area. Now, we also have to remember that around this time in Marvel Comics, or really Ultimate Marvel Comics, we technically have two different Spider-Men. We got Peter Parker, and we also have Richard Parker, the son of Peter Parker. Now, for Richard, he was not bit by a spider. Instead, he has the AI suit that was originally given to Peter Parker, but Peter no longer used it. And so the AI system went over to Richard. And so right now, it allows him to be Spider-Man for the time being as well. Now, in our last video for Richard, he met Black Cat. Now, in this reality, Black Cat's kind of like, 16, 17 years old, around his age. So instead of us seeing Black Cat and Peter Parker getting together or possibly flirting with one another, it's Black Cat getting with his son, Richard Parker, instead. Now, for Peter, he wants to have a conversation with the AI system that's now being used by Richard. And it's really more Peter saying like, I want to make sure my son is well protected. But at the same time, I want to make sure that if he is getting trained to be a Spider-Man, that you are properly training him. But if things get too rough, if things get way too crazy, take my son out of that area and get him somewhere safe. And of course, you do have the AI Peter say, I understand, like, I'll make sure that your son is protected. And so just like that, you now have two Spider-Men, but at the same time, they're going to work together to fight against different bad guys, like right now, the Sandman. And so you do have our two Spider-Men head over to this military base. Now, when they do arrive at this military base, they are then confronted by Ultimate Sandman. Now, let me say real quick. When it comes to Ultimate Sandman, you really can't do much with the character when it comes to his design. And the reason why, because the guy's powers is to control sand and turn into sand. That's really it. Like, you can't really change the whole design of the character, because then if you do, you no longer have Ultimate Sandman. But either way, for our heroes, they kind of realize there's something off about this Sandman. And the reason why, because every single time he tries to take a human form, this tower nearby prevents him from actually doing it, keeping him in his Sandman form. But on top of that, he's not allowed to leave this area. And so you have Richard Parker, while you have Peter Parker get his butt kicked, but you have Richard Parker go out of his way to turn the tower off. And when he does, you then have Ultimate Sandman being able to turn into his human form. Now, you do have Sandman tell us his origin story, where 3 years ago, he snuck into this base, not realizing that they were doing some illegal government experiments being done by a group called Midas. Now, when they found him, they used him as part of one of their experiments. And of course, it turned him into Sandman. Now, once they were done with him, they left him behind to kind of keep him there, with the tower being nearby to make sure that he cannot leave. But on top of that, make sure that he would not be able to take a human form. And that's really it for his origin. And you have Sandman say, hey guys, you know what? Thanks to you, I can finally leave. And so he leaves just like that. And that's why I say it's Hickman saying like, hey, here's Ultimate Sandman, but I'm going to put him on the back burner for the time being. Now, for me personally, it could also be Hickman saying like, hey, in the old Ultimate Marvel universe, we had a Sandman, but he was not really used that much when it came to Ultimate Spider-Man. And so most likely is Hickman saying it's time for Sandman, at least one Ultimate Sandman, to get the work or the love that he deserves. And so right now it's him saying, I'm going to put this character on the back burner, but don't worry, you're going to see him again very soon. But after all of that, you didn't have Peter being able to just go back to his RV with Richard, but to also spend some alone time with Mary Jane. Now, I kind of like the idea of Peter just doing a quick check-in, kind of like, hey, why are you still here? Like, why do you still love me? Why do you care so much for me? And, you have Mary Jane kind of play it all kind of like, oh, you know why? Because you're cute and you're hot. And that's really it. Now, honestly, we already know there's more to it. But the following morning, you have Peter Parker check in on Uncle Ben because he's the only person in the family who did not go with the Parkers as they're on the run right now, trying to get away from the Sinister Six. But while you have Peter Parker on the phone with Uncle Ben had a visitor. You see, Uncle Ben and Jonah, they left behind the Daily Bugle. And matter of fact, started their own paper, better known as The Paper. Now, their main goal was to show the corruption of the Kingpin, to kind of show that he's part of some kind of bigger organization. Now, for JJ and also Uncle Ben, they had created this person known as Ben Reilly, who was supposedly helping them with their investigation. And so what the Kingpin did was he killed off every single person across the world whose name was Ben Reilly to hopefully ruin the entire investigation of Uncle Ben and Jonah, not knowing that technically he did nothing at all. But it's Kingpin saying like, if you don't drop this, I will make sure to make your lives even harder. But it's also the Kingpin saying like, I'm kind of enjoying the fact that you guys are trying to bring me down. And the reason why, because it takes the pressure off other people of the organization that the Kingpin belongs to. Of course, the Makers Council. And so it's Kingpin kind of like, hey, you can keep going, but I will be there to ruin every single plan you have when it comes to bringing me down. And for Uncle Ben and Jonah, they're not going to stop. They're going to double down on their investigation to prove that the Kingpin is truly a corrupt person. I have been waiting for this for a good while, the origin of Ultimate Mysterio, because honestly, when he first appeared in Ultimate Spider-Man, I was kind of like, hey, that Mysterio right there seems way more intriguing than the main Marvel Mysterio. Now, this is not me hating on the original Mysterio, because honestly, Mysterio is one of my favorite bad guys thanks to Spider-Man on the PlayStation 1. But when it came to Ultimate Mysterio, I just had to know more about the origin of this character. And the thing is, I did not see this coming at all. And it really shows that Jonathan Hickman still got it when it comes to being one of the great writers over at Marvel Comics. But we also have to remember that this is taking place right after the supposed death of Harry Osborn. And honestly, I kind of knew that Harry was not going to be dead. And the only reason why, because, well, it was too early to kill off somebody that important to run when it comes to Jonathan Hickman. But at first, it does kind of seem like he's still playing with the idea that Harry Osborn is officially dead. And you have Gwen right now just standing over his tombstone. So this kind of begins a flashback, or really more us learning the origin of Gwen Stacy, because right after that, we go back in time and we see her talking to her father. And this first flashback does take place right after her mother had recently died. And so you have her father right now trying to help her not really move on, but how to handle the pain of losing somebody, which can be very difficult to do. Which then kind of skips us forward a tad bit. And the reason why I'm saying that, because we see her now with Harry Osborn, and we're kind of right before you have the two characters get married, because you do have the two characters announce to one another that they love each other. So we're seeing the early days of their relationship, and also her relationship with his parents. Now, why you have the two characters at dinner with one another, that is when you have Gwen get a call. And apparently they had just found her father. And so it kind of leads us back into that flashback once again. I kind of like this because it's no longer just, hey, it's going to be hard to move on from your mother's death. No, it's now him saying like, when you're a young child and when it comes to your parents, you look at them in an image most of the time, not all the time, that they are like the perfect person to you. They're always there for you. And so for Gwen, for her mom's death, she will always have that image of her mother being perfect, but her father's still there. And he's saying right right now, like, you're going to learn over time that with me, that's not the case at all. I'm not that perfect person. That matter of fact, there's people out there who think differently about me. And then his eyes begin to glow. And this leads us into a different flashback. Because we do learn here that for her father, he was part of some kind of cult. And the thing was, after his death, his wishes was for her to join that organization. And so we do learn here that technically 5 people are all part of some kind of cult, and they're all working together to be Mysterio. But as we fast forward in the timeline for her origin, we do see her now being married to Harry Osborn. You know, it's the actual wedding night, and she gets the chance to dance with his father, Norman. Now, we have not really seen Norman in this reality because in this reality, Norman has been dead. He was killed a while ago. But for Norman right now, is him telling Gwen, like, you could have done better. Because for Norman, he does not look at Harry as a great man, as a great son. And so he says, listen, do not let my son stop you from what you can become down the road. And so she tells him, I understand. But this kind of leads us into another flashback, right? A Christmas one. And with this Christmas flashback is Harry handing her a book that was written by this reality's version of Brother Voodoo. Now, with this book right here, it's really more him bringing up this conspiracy where every reality, every Earth in the multiverse might have 2 timelines, right? And so this is Hickman saying, hey, don't forget, because the maker did make this reality his own image. But also it's him hinting at the idea of Gwen trying to figure out how to bring down the maker, that she technically does know, and that this whole idea, this reality, is fake. Because as we get into another flashback, it's another meeting going on with all the different members of the Mysterios. So you have Gwen, Quentin, and the other 3. We have no idea who they are just yet. But with the group, they have been wondering, like, is it true that this reality is not the real reality of this Earth? Was things change? And of course, for Gwen, she now has confirmation. Because remember, when it came to Harry Osborn, when he and Oscorp had absorbed part of the Stark Company, they also absorbed all their files. In those files, they had learned the big secret. And so for Gwen, it's her now telling the cult, like, hey, listen, yes, we were right, that this reality's timeline is completely wrong. And so the goal now is to get the truth out there. But for Gwen, she does have a plan. And that plan started with Peter Parker and Mary Jane, technically Peter Parker's uncle, because those 2 characters, they left the Daily Bugle and began their own company, better known as The Paper, and Gwen has been funding them. And so, yes, you had Gwen and Harry hanging out with Peter and Mary Jane, yeah, but for Gwen, she was always working. And so she was like, hey, Mary Jane, I want to meet Ben and also JJ. Let's not forget that it was a point in time that Uncle Ben and JJ, they were going after Harry because they realized that Harry is the Green Goblin. But for Gwen, it was now how to take them and push them in a different direction and kind of use them as a way to bring out the big secret about this reality. Now we're getting kind of closer and closer to the present day, right? And so now we're at the point where Peter and Harry were both kidnapped by Kraven. Now, for months, no one knew where they were at until Mysterio found him. Now, it was a different Mysterio who found Harry and Peter and informed Gwen, like, hey, listen, I found your husband, Kraven has him, and he has no idea about the fact that our alliance is with the Mole Man. And so those 2 characters have been working together. Now, right now, it's Quentin Beckett seems like who is Mysterio, not Gwen. But either way, it's also him telling Gwen, like, you gotta fire Otto. And the reason why, because remember, Harry said in an earlier book, if he ever disappears or gets kidnapped, Gwen goes under surveillance 24/7 to make sure that she is well protected. But that's a problem for the Mysterio organization because now that means sooner or later Otto could discover them. And so you had Gwen fire him as a way to protect the cult. And so now we kind of jump back over to that moment, right? Where we saw Kraven kill off Harry. And we already knew, like seriously, we already knew that Harry would not be dead in this reality. It was all a trick being done by Mysterio. So for Peter and Kraven, they believed that yes, Harry was killed off by Kraven. But in reality, it was just an illusion that Harry was saved the very last second by Mysterio. Now, at this point, the amulet has passed on to Gwen. So at this point, Gwen is now Mysterio. She has saved her husband's life and was able to get him away. And so for Peter, he left that area believing his best friend died, but no, homeboy's still alive. Now you do have Gwen go ahead and kill off Kraven once she does show him on like, hey, you've been played once again. And she kills off Kraven just like that. So no more ultimate Kraven. And so as we get back over to the present day, it's just us now seeing Gwen and Harry being together once again. Now, it's the two of them kind of making sure like this stays a secret, to kind of play with the idea of Harry being dead, but also kind of like figuring out what their next steps are going to be. And so the next issue is all about Harry's war, apparently. And I'm kind of like, man, where will that storyline go for Jonathan Hickman? Man, can I just say, like, Jonathan Hickman, you are an amazing writer. Like, we are now getting to that point where it's an all-out war happening between Harry Osborn, Mysterio, which is Gwen Stacy, but also Peter Parker, going up against the last few members of the Sinister Six. Like, Hickman has been building up to this moment. Now, before we're able to officially dive into issue number 17, we have to remember that this issue is picking up where the last few storylines had left off at. Like, for example, we have believed that Kraven had killed off Harry Osborn because you had Kraven kidnap Peter and Harry. Now, we found out later on that Harry was not killed off by Kraven. And matter of fact, he is alive thanks to Mysterio. But we also learned Mysterio was Gwen Stacy. Now, technically, it's not just Gwen. There's a whole council that makes up the Mysterio persona, basically. And so in this issue right here, we're kind of figuring out who are the different members of this Mysterio council, but it's also Gwen and Harry going to war against the Sinister Six. And so as we get into the opening pages of this issue alone, we pick up with Harry Osborn meeting up with Uncle Ben. And this is pretty huge because for Peter, he has no idea that technically Harry is alive. To Peter, Harry's still dead, and Peter and Mary Jane, their family, they're on the run right now. They're trying their best to stay away from the Kingpin and the last few members of the Sinister Six. But this is Harry coming to Uncle Ben saying like, hey, Ben, listen, so I'm not dead, I'm alive, but also I need to get a hold of Peter. I need Peter's help. Please tell me that you have a way to get a hold of him. And for Uncle Ben, he's kind of like, I mean, yeah, I do, but like, hold on. We all thought you died. Like, you have no idea what your death did to Peter. It literally broke him down. He is full of rage. His family is currently on the run. Like, you have no idea what you did to Peter. But again, is Harry kind of like, I know, I'm apologizing, but right now, I need Peter. Now, later on in the day, we pick up with Gwen Stacy. Now, by this point, Gwen is officially in charge of Oscorp because with the death of Harry Osborn, it had to go to somebody that he trusts. That would be Gwen Stacy. Now, here's the thing, because we see Gwen meeting up with Robbie Robertson. And for Robbie, he still works for the Daily Bugle. That's not the big factor here. Right now, we are learning that Robbie is one of the people alongside with Gwen that makes up the Mysterio Council. Now, here's the thing, because for Robbie, with him working for the Daily Bugle, he's kind of like, listen, I came here to give you those reports, but I have to know, what are you going to do with those reports? Because we Mysterios have to stick together. Now, before Gwen is able to give him some kind of answer, that is when she is told, that her 4 o'clock meeting has arrived. And that meeting is with the Kingpin. Now, the reason why the Kingpin is here because it's the Kingpin saying like, hey, listen, I want to make sure that we're able to establish the same kind of agreement I had with your husband. And matter of fact, I brought Mr. Wesley here to kind of make sure you do sign off on everything when it comes to our agreement. Now, you have the Kingpin walk away just like that. Now, once the Kingpin leaves, we learn that Mr. Wesley is also one of the members of the Mysterio Council as well. So it kind of makes sense on how Gwen Stacy was able to find the Kraven when it came to him holding on to Peter and Harry in an earlier storyline. But either way, you do have Mr. Wesley hand Gwen Stacy the amulet. Now, with this amulet, it allows her to be Mysterio for at least 1 week. And so right after he leaves, Harry walks into the office and it's Gwen saying like, listen, we only have this item for like 1 week. In that 1 week, we can do so much. So you know what? It's now time for us to go to war. And it's kind of cool because you do have Harry stop by the lab of Dr. Octavius. Now, when he does, it's really more of Harry saying like, hey, listen, I need my suit, but also I need you to do a few things for me when it comes to Peter and his family. And so for Dr. Octavius, he now has to go over to the home of Peter Parker to make sure it's very secure. Because for Harry, he needs Peter back here when they go to war against the different members of the Sinister Six. Now, with all that being said, it's also Dr. Octavius telling Harry what else he needs when it comes to building the right equipment to allow Harry to win this war. So everything is slowly coming together. And of course, this issue right here is kind of like just the prelude for the big war. The next 2 chapters for sure are going to be truly amazing. But either way, Harry and Doc Ock, they go their separate ways. Now, something else we have to remember. When it comes to Harry Osborn, his Green Goblin suit, it has an AI system installed in it. The AI system acts just like Norman Osborn. And so you have Norman right now, this AI version of him, just talking down to Harry. Now, for me personally, I kind of feel like this plot line right here might go somewhere very soon. But either way, it's the AI Norman kind of like, you got captured? You were almost killed off? Hold on real quick. Your wife is now in charge of our company, the family company? Like, what in the world are you doing? How much can you disappoint me? Like, you are the worst son ever. And for Harry, it's kind of like, yeah, Dad, I know, whatever. Either way, it's Harry getting into the goblin armor. And then he flies over, picks up Mysterio, aka Gwen Stacy, and they head over to this building. And kind of find out for Harry, he now has rockets in his armor along with his glider. And so he shoots a few rockets right at this building, blowing a hole right into it. Now, we learn here that this building is a building that belongs to Mr. Negative. Here's the catch. You see, this building is a bomb factory. Now, it used to be an apartment building, but most of the people left when he arrived. Some folks stayed behind because, of course, they had nowhere else to go. Now, here's the thing, because for Harry, he's kind of like, hey, why in the world they're not shooting at us for? It is Gwen telling Harry like, well, if they did, their bullets could cause an explosion in this building. But they do have swords. Now, you do have Gwen tell Harry, your goal is to get the innocent people out of here while I take care of the bombs. So just like that, you have Harry being able to accomplish that goal that was given to him. Now, for Gwen, she does take care of the bombs, but not in the way that Harry thought she would. The bomb still goes off. Now, for Harry, he's kind of like, hey, what if I missed somebody when it came to the innocent people living in that building? Now, for Gwen, she's kind of like, if you did, oh well. But technically, I wanted to make a statement. I want them to know that we're now going to war. And the last 2 pages, man, the last 2 pages for me is just perfect because it's Harry right now just calling up Peter. Now, at first, it's Uncle Ben calling up Peter. And it's Peter like, hey, Uncle Ben, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. But you did have Harry get on the line. And it's Harry telling Peter like, hey, 1, I am alive. But 2, I need you to come back home. And just like that, we are now getting into the turf war. Like, man, Jonathan Hickman, I can't wait. But with that, okay, so getting back into our coverage over Ultimate Spider-Man, we do pick up with issue number 18. Now, here's the thing, because this right here is like the war has officially begun, because it's now Spider-Man and his crew getting ready to go up against Kingpin and his Sinister Six. Like, everything's on deck at the moment for both parties. And really, for Spider-Man's side, they technically are made the move, because you had Mysterio and also Green Goblin attack one of the facilities that belong to Mr. Negative, one of the members of the Sinister Six. But now it's time for Kingpin to make his move. Now, as we go through today's video, I'll re-explain a few things so that you'll be ready for the future books to come out down the road, because the rumor is that all the different Ultimate books are going to end at issue number 24, which honestly, I don't believe. But hey, it could be the truth there. And so as we get into the opening pages for Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 18, we're really picking up with Peter Parker meeting Harry Osborn again for the first time in a few months. Because remember, in an earlier issue, we were kind of left to believe that Harry Osborn was killed off by Kraven. Now here's the thing, because we learn later on that he actually survived because of Mysterio. But we also learned that Mysterio was Gwen Stacy. Now, there's a tad bit more of information with that, but let's save that for later on. But for right now, for Peter, he hadn't seen Harry in a long time, but Harry did not come alone. Harry brought Uncle Ben and also J. Jonah Jameson. And so for JJ, Uncle Ben, they're going to stay with Mary Jane and the kids in Utah, while you have Peter and Harry head back over to New York to begin the war against Kingpin and the Sinister Six. Now, as we do switch over to the Mysterio court, we do get reminded of who are the different members who basically make up the Mysterio in this reality. So in the earlier issue, we had discovered that the reason why Harry Osborn had survived because one of the Mysterios was Gwen Stacy. Now, the last couple of issues, we also learn who's part of the court with her that basically makes up the whole Mysterio crew. So, for example, we have learned that Joe Robertson, who works at the Daily Bugle, is one of the members of this group. You also have James Wesley, who is, of course, the right-hand man of the Kingpin. You also have Quentin Beck, which of course makes a lot of sense. But while you have those few members right there discussing the moves that Gwen had made, which of course is the all-out war against the Kingpin, we also learned that Vanessa Fisk is also one of the members of this court as well. Now, we have not learned what her actual role in the overall storyline for Ultimate Spider-Man, but this is pretty huge. But you do have her kind of agree with Gwen, like, hey, what Gwen did was correct. We always just sit here and talk and talk and talk. And the thing is, we don't get anywhere. And so what Gwen did, she began the process of pushing us in a brand new direction, allowing us to do something new and possibly better for us. And so, of course, she's like, Gwen, good job. Now let's go to war. But now we have to switch back over to Peter and also Harry Osborn. Now, these two characters, they arrive in New York. It's Green Goblin and Spider-Man working together again. The dynamic duo in this city of New York in this reality. Anyways, though, when they do arrive, it's kind of cool because for Peter, he has been Spider-Man over in Utah because we saw Ultimate Sandman, but now it's him being back in New York and having the ability to be Spider-Man here again. And so, of course, you do have him and Green Goblin go fight a few different characters like Shocker, Hammerhead, and Vermin. And I'm kind of sad we didn't get an actual Vermin story, or at least a Hammerhead story, but it's kind of cool to see these characters in this reality. Also, they do go after Shocker as well. But once you do have our two heroes handle those villains right there, for Peter, he wants to go back to his old home. And so, of course, they do. But Harry got to tell Peter about something very important. that when it came to Harry Osborn, he remembered how worried Peter was about his family. And so what Harry did was he told Doc Ock, like, hey, listen, I need you to basically build a security system for the home of the Parkers. Just in case something does happen to Peter, at least his family will be protected for a tad bit longer. And so, of course, when Peter and Harry go home to Peter's house, they see Peter's house complete wreck. And the reason why, because for Doc Ock, he basically got trapped in one of his traps that he had created for Peter and his family. And so you do have Harry explain, like, the reason why I did this, because I remember when you and I were kidnapped by Kraven, you were so worried about your family. I wanted to make sure that your family will be protected no matter what. And so I told Doc Ock here to go ahead and build all these different types of security systems to basically protect your family. Now, at first, Peter is a tad bit upset, but then he realized what Harry did is not wrong. Like, what Harry did is the right thing, because what if something happens to me? That leaves my family defenseless against my enemies like Kingpin, or even like, Mr. Negative, and the list goes on. And so now we switch back over to Mary Jane, May, Uncle Ben, and also JJ, because this is where you basically have the Kingpin make his move, right? It all begins with the family of Peter Parker, but none of the characters I had just mentioned. Matter of fact, the person who basically helps Kingpin to make that move is no other than Richard Parker. You see, for Richard, he has his own Spider-Man suit. It was the AI suit that Peter got at the very beginning of this run, but now it's Richard using that suit and being his own Spider-Man. And so for Richard right now, let's not forget that he has been texting Black Cat for a good period of time, because in this reality, Felicia is only like 16 years old, so around his age. And so you have the two characters being able to build a bond with one another. And that right there is the main problem, because while you had Richard waiting for everyone to come back, he was texting Black Cat. They were flirting. You had him call her his girlfriend. She called him her boyfriend. But she's kind of like, Richard, I need you back here right now. I need your help. And so, of course, when you do have Richard arrive, he does find Felicia, but he also finds the Kingpin. So just like that, the Kingpin had made his move. He now officially has Richard for himself. He's now a prisoner to use against Peter Parker and also Harry Osborn. And so that is technically the end of this storyline. But the question is now, where could the story possibly go? Because we only have a few chapters left if the rumors are true that all the different Ultimate books are going to end at issue number 24. But either way. Okay, so we are like technically behind when it comes to the Ultimate Marvel universe. And the thing is, Ultimate Marvel is going to end like very, very soon. So we have to do a lot of catching up so that when it comes time for the end of the Ultimate Marvel universe, that we are technically ready for it. Now, I kind of want to jump back into Ultimate Spider-Man, because the last time we had actually talked about this character, the ending for our last video was, a huge cliffhanger, kind of leaving folks wondering where could the story possibly go next. Because in our last video for Ultimate Spider-Man, we had saw that Richard Parker was technically tricked by Felicia Hardy. You see, Felicia Hardy had told Richard Parker that she needed his help. And so, of course, for Richard, he went out of his way to be with Felicia, to actually help her out. Now remember, for Richard Parker, he is the other Spider-Man, because he's holding on to the old AI suit that Peter Parker had used at the very beginning of this series. And so for Richard Parker, he now has the ability to be Spider-Man by using the old AI suit. But either way, when it comes to Richard Parker, he did try his best to go see Felicia Hardy to kind of figure out what kind of help she needed. The problem was that when Homeboy arrived, he realized that he was tricked by her because she's working with the Kingpin, because her father is part of the Sinister Six. And so the video kind of stopped right there, leaving us wondering where could the story go next? Are we going to see the Kingpin possibly kill off Richard Parker or at least hold on to him as a prisoner? Well, as we get into the opening pages for Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 19, we see Richard Parker right now kind of apologizing to Felicia Hardy. So we kind of get the idea that Richard Parker was technically able to get away from the Kingpin. Now remember, when it comes to Ultimate Comics, each issue takes place in one particular month. So right now, for issue number 19, it takes place in July. The last issue took place in June. And so we get the idea that yes, Richard Parker was technically able to get away. But the question is now, how was he able to get away from the Kingpin? Well, we do kind of skip back in time with a flashback. Now, before we dive into the actual flashback, you have to remember, when it came to Peter Parker in the early days of Ultimate Spider-Man, he had this AI suit that was technically created by Stark Industries. And the same kind of goes for, well, Harry Osborn's Green Goblin suit. But when it came to Peter Parker and Harry, Dr. Octavius told them, like, hey, listen, y'all suits have the ability to have an AI system inside of them to kind of help you guys out there in the field. Now, for Harry Osborn, his AI acts out like his, well, father, Norman Osborn. But for Peter Parker, his AI is just, well, Peter Parker again. Now, over time, Richard Parker was technically able to gain the Spider-Man suit, the first one, to allow him the ability to be Spider-Man, but without the actual abilities of Spider-Man. Now, when it comes to Richard Parker, the AI says, hey, listen, I want to protect you. I want to make sure you have this alive and everything. And that is when we see the AI suit technically turn into a ultimate version of Venom. And of course, this ultimate version just completely wrecks Kingpin and all the different guards and people he has around him. Now, it does get to the point where it does seem like the AI suit was going to kill off not Felicia Hardy, but her father. But she begged Richard to stop. And that leads us back over to the present day. And now we're seeing a meeting going on between the different members of the Sinister Six. Now for Kingpin, he wants to know, like, where in the world is Kraven? Because we know that Kraven died back in Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 16 by the hands of Mysterio, who is Gwen Stacy, and Kraven was torturing Harry Osborn. So for Mysterio, she had to go out of her way to protect her husband by killing off Kraven. But for most of the members of the Sinister Six, they don't know that Kraven is technically dead here at the moment. Well, Mole Man knows because, well, Kraven did die in his territory. But for Kingpin and Mr. Negative and other members, they don't know that. And so for Kingpin, he wants to know, like, where in the world is Kraven at? Now, on top of that, we also learned that Mr. Negative was never told about what Richard Parker did in the last video, or this video technically, when it came to him turning into, well, Ultimate Venom and bringing down the whole house on Kingpin and all his guards. And so you have the Kingpin kind of give some information over to Mr. Negative, but not everything. But you did have everyone kind of wondering, what are they going to do when they run into that creature once again? And you have the Kingpin say, oh, we are going to kill that monster. They don't realize that the entire time they're having that meeting that Mysterio and also Green Goblin, they're listening in. So it's kind of like, okay, cool. The war is going to start very soon. Well, really, it already has started, but now we might see a bigger battle coming for our heroes against Kingpin and his Sinister Six. Now, we do pick up with Peter Parker, and when we do, is Peter Parker going back over to his old apartment. Now, you have the Mole Man appear there, right? When Mole Man does appear, he's then confronted by Peter Parker, because Peter Parker kind of realized that sooner or later, somebody might technically stop by his apartment. Somebody who may work for the Kingpin and the Sinister Six. Now, for Mole Man, he's not really on the side of the Kingpin. Like, he wants to get out. He wants to get away from the Sinister Six. And he believes that Peter Parker might be the key to help him get away from the Kingpin. But it's also, Mole Man telling Peter Parker, like, hey, listen, even though right now they don't know who you are, sooner or later they're going to figure out who you are. Your family will never have the ability to live here ever again. Now, for Spider-Man, he's kind of like, what does that mean? But it's Mole Man saying like, dude, they're going to figure out who you are. Come after you and then come after your family. Like, technically, you are somewhat screwed. Now, when it comes to Mole Man, it's also him kind of informing Peter Parker, like, listen, I want to get out. I want to get away from the Kingpin and his Sinister Six. Now, for Peter, he tells Mole Man, like, there's no way I might work with you. But he says, okay, you might not work with me. What about your friends, though? Mysterio and the Green Goblin. Because for Mole Man, he was there when Kraven was torturing Peter Parker and also Harry Osborn. And it's him saying, like, listen, I know what y'all went through. What y'all went through could change a person. And he's talking about Harry Osborn, not Peter Parker. Now, we do learn that when it comes to Mary Jane, Peter Parker, and the family, including her mother, they're all staying with Aunt Anna. Now, when it comes to Peter Parker and Mary Jane, they had grounded Richard Parker because in our last video, Richard Parker snuck away from his family to go help Black Cat out. He was not told to go there at all. And matter of fact, for Peter Parker and also Mary Jane, they kind of hate the idea of him being the other Spider-Man, but at the same time, they feel like be a great bonding thing for both Peter and also Richard. But he was not supposed to leave the house again after what happened in our last video. And so when he does come back home, you have Peter tell the AI suit that Richard is not allowed to leave at all, meaning that that suit now goal is to make sure that Richard Parker does serve his, I almost said serve his sentence, but I guess it would be a sentence because homeboy is grounded. Now, this leads into a conversation between Peter Parker and Mary Jane. And for me, this conversation is kind of hinting at the idea that Mary Jane is very close to her, well, breaking point. And honestly, Homegirl has the reason to kind of feel like that because if you think about it, for Mary Jane, she had gone through a lot in this Ultimate Spider-Man series. At first, Peter Parker did not tell her like he was Spider-Man. He told his daughter because she found out an accident, but then once he did tell Mary Jane, things got worse just left and right. And now technically they're on the run. They're trying to hide from the Kingpin and also all his different people as well, who's coming after Spider-Man, who's coming after the Green Goblin and also Mysterio. And it's now her kind of wondering like, Peter, can you even trust Harry and also Gwen? Now for Peter, he says, I can trust Harry, but Harry trusts Gwen, which also says Peter does not trust Gwen at all. But again, for Mary Jane, she's not just worried about Peter Parker, she's worried for her entire family, but especially Richard Parker, who's now the other Spider-Man, who almost got killed in our last video. And so she's kind of at that breaking point, but not just yet. And so it's now Mary Jane saying, Peter, you have to tell me everything. Like everything you know about you, your powers, Richard Parker, our son, or the Kingpin, Harry, Gwen. Like tell me everything that's going on. And this leads us into the next chapter, Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 20. Now, issue number 20 doesn't really do a lot when it comes to the whole idea of moving the plot line forward. So unfortunately for you guys out there kind of wondering like, hey, what comes right after issue number 19? Nothing. Because we now see Peter Parker and Mary Jane and Harry Osborn and also Gwen Stacy meeting up to have dinner. Now, we also get reminded here that for Harry Osborn, to the entire world, Harry is dead because for Peter Parker at first, he believed that Harry was dead. He told Gwen Stacy and Gwen and Peter come out of the way to announce that Harry Osborn is officially dead. But then we kind of find out that Harry was not dead because for Gwen Stacy, she actually did save the life of Harry Osborn, killed off Kraven, but kind of hid Harry Osborn. So to the entire world, Harry's dead. But in reality, Harry is alive and well at the moment. But either way, you do have all four characters meet up for dinner because it's now time for Peter, Harry, and also Gwen to explain everything to Mary Jane. Now, I do want to go ahead and shift over to Uncle Ben because Uncle Ben had been assigned to watch over Richard and May Parker for the night, right? And so for Uncle Ben, it does seem like he wants to have this conversation with Richard Parker to kind of figure out like how much trouble Richard's in right now with him going out being the other Spider-Man in that AI suit. Now, for Richard Parker, at first, he does inform Uncle Ben that he does not really want to talk about it. But for Uncle Ben, it's kind of like, no, we are going to talk about it. But I kind of want to go ahead and like shift back over to the dinner. And here's the reason why. Because when it comes to the dinner, it's really more Mary Jane learning everything from Harry, Peter, and Gwen. But it's also Mary Jane expressing her concerns about them being in this war against the Kingpin and his fellow Sinister Six. Because for Mary Jane, it's her saying like, I want to know what lines you guys are going to cross. Because if you guys are going to go out of your way to cross certain lines, then I want to know about the lines you may cross to achieve this goal to possibly win against Kingpin. Because the way Gwen is talking is kind of like, I don't really care what we have to do. We have to win. And for Harry, he's kind of in the middle, where it's like he wants to cross those lines to win, but at the same time, he might be held back because of Peter Parker. And then there's Peter Parker, where for Mary Jane, she wants to make sure that her husband does not cross those lines that Gwen is ready to cross. And matter of fact, for Mary Jane, she points out in the fact that for Gwen Stacy, the way she's talking, it seems like she has nothing to lose. And technically, she doesn't. And the conversation does continue on between Peter, Mary Jane, and Harry, and also Gwen, but it's a way of like, as Mary Jane continues on to express how she's truly feeling, is Gwen telling Mary Jane, like, suck it up in a way. Like, listen, the only way this is going to end is when we win, which also means that we got to cross some lines. And so the way Gwen is talking, it just pushes Mary Jane over the edge, where she just basically walks away. Now for Peter, he wants to go and comfort his wife. But for Gwen Stacy, she kind of feels like it should be her to kind of sit down with Mary Jane and explain like what she meant by what she said earlier. So you have Mary Jane and Gwen go into the bathroom. And for me personally, the conversation does evolve here because it's not just Gwen Stacy saying once again, like, hey, Mary Jane, you have to realize, like, we got to cross lines. No, it's her saying, like, we need your husband because he's faster. He's stronger than both me and my husband, the Green Goblin. But the problem is your husband has a weakness. It's how he views the world that holds him back. And because of that, it might get him killed or possibly us killed out in the field. Now for Mary Jane, she also brings up the fact that everyone has a weakness. For Gwen Stacy, her weakness is the idea that she needs her amulet to be Mysterio. Because remember, there is a council of people that make up the Mysterio character. They all have to share that amulet. And so right now for Gwen Stacy, she does not have it for another 11 more days, which also means that she is an easy target here at the moment. And so for Mary Jane, she's like, dude, you're also an easy target as well. But now it's time for Gwen to say, let me explain what I'm trying to tell you. And it's really more of Gwen Stacy saying like, listen, even though technically right now I am weak, I'm an easy target. Mary Jane, you and your kids, you're always an easy target. You, Mary Jane especially, is an easy target every single minute, in every single day, in every single month, in every single year. And so it's her saying like, Mary Jane, you don't have a way to protect yourself. You don't have a way to protect your kids. You don't have a plan for yourself. And that right there is a problem. Mary Jane, you should go out of your way to make yourself a stronger person, to protect yourself, to protect your children. Because right now, you don't have a plan. You don't have a way to protect yourself or your kids. And that will get you killed. And so for Mary Jane, she snaps and said, hey, you know what? How many more days you have again before you get the amulet? And Gwen says 11 more days. And you then have Mary Jane punch Gwen right in the face. Now, after that, you have Mary Jane walk back to Harry and also Peter Parker. And she says, Peter, you are a good man. Harry Osborn, you have the ability to become a good man. But Gwen Stacy, she will get everyone killed. But the last 2 pages of this storyline, really the last page more exactly, to kind of hint at the idea the next person to go after Spider-Man, Mysterio, and also Green Goblin is going to be Mr. Negative. So the next storyline or next story arc should involve him. Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over Ultimate Spider-Man. And now we're going to pick up with issues number 21 and 22. Man, I'm kind of sad right now because, it's the idea of the Ultimate Marvel Universe ending once again. And I kind of feel like Marvel has the ability to kind of like continue the Ultimate Marvel Universe because honestly, it was making them a lot of money. But at the same time, it's probably best to go ahead and end this universe on a good note rather than a bad note. Now, with that being said, as we get into Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 21, we pick up with James Wesley. Now, for James Wesley, as we all know, the dude is the right-hand man for the Kingpin. But the problem is right now for James is that as he's getting outside his vehicle, he is then instantly attacked by one of the bullseyes that works for the Kingpin. And so just like that, James has now been officially captured. But the question is now, who has gone out of their way to capture James? Well, and that would be because of Mr. Negative, who had influenced Bullseye go out of their way to grab James and bring James to him. Now, for Mr. Negative, we have to remember, the dude is part of the Sinister Six. But here's the catch, though. You see, for Mr. Negative, he kind of feels like right now his back is in a corner because so much chaos right now happening with the all-out war between Green Goblin, Mysterio, Kingpin, and the rest of the Sinister Six. But it's also Mr. Negative want to go out of his way to get rid of the Kingpin, to move up the ladder. But to do that, he has to learn information about the Kingpin. And so he grabbed James, somebody who's Kingpin's right-hand man. Now, we're also kind of given small pieces of the origin to Mr. Negative. And really, his origin is really important for the overall storyline in this one particular issue because when it came to him and his sister, they moved over to America as immigrants. Now, when they did arrive, apparently around the same time was when the Maker began to play with this world. But when it came to him and his sister, they were basically poor. And so you had different criminals in the area use them for different kinds of crimes. At the same time, though, when it came to Mr. Negative, his powers began to manifest. Now, with his powers, him and his sister were technically able to build an empire in their part of town. And that empire was very strong. Now, for a brief moment, we have to shift over to J. Jonah Jameson and Uncle Ben because in this reality, those two characters right there, they're trying their best to get their paper off the ground, to get the people kind of read their paper, to show proof of corruption going on across the world thanks to the Maker. Now, the problem is that for JJ, he says, listen, how some people work is that once you hear enough bad news over and over again, you begin the process of trying to build a wall around you to block out the bad news. And so it's him saying we have gone too big when it came to going after the Maker. So why not go ahead and try to, reveal all the bad things about Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin. We do shift over to, Harry Osborn and also Otto Octavius. Now, for Harry Osborn, is him coming to Otto to get some advice about what to do with his marriage to Gwen Stacy. Because for Harry Osborn, he had no idea that Gwen Stacy was technically Mysterio. But on top of that, he had no idea that she had all these different plans to bring down the Kingpin, that she has been doing this for a very long time. And so for Harry, he kind of feels like their marriage is no longer as strong as it used to be. Now, for Harry, he also finds the spider and Otto Octavius freaks out, kind of hinting at the idea that spider could become very important down the road. But it's also Otto telling Harry, like, listen, here's some advice for you. Just get a divorce. And I'm kind of like, dang, Otto, like you don't have any other kind of advice to help the man out? Now, we do get another piece of the origin to, well, Mr. Negative. And we learn here that for Mr. Negative, once he had met the Kingpin, because it's going to happen sooner or later, the idea of Mr. Negative and his sister having their own empire, but the same goes for the Kingpin, sooner or later, their criminal empires would cross paths. Now, for Mr. Negative, he felt like he should be able to use his powers on Wilson Fisk to kind of control him. But the problem is, Wilson's willpower is so strong that for Mr. Negative, his powers does not work on him at all. But you do have the two guys come to an understanding and kind of build an alliance between one another. But back in the present day, we do see Mr. Negative kind of hinting at the idea of using Wesley as a way to get to the Kingpin because he believes that Wesley is so loyal to the Kingpin. But you did have Wesley say, that's not the case at all. I'm not really, loyal to him at all because I work for somebody else. I work with other people. And so you didn't have Mr. Negative being able to use his powers on Wesley to have Wesley tell him that he is Mysterio, or at least one of the many Mysterios. Because let's not forget that when it came to Mysterio, at first we had no idea who Mysterio was. And then out of nowhere, we have found out Mysterio was Gwen Stacy, but not really. You see, what happens is that when it comes to the council, they meet up to figure out what their next moves are going to be. But each time you have one person wearing the amulet that allows that person to have abilities like Mysterio. And so for Gwen Stacy, where her war against Wilson Fisk, she has been holding on to the amulet more than anybody else. But you didn't have everyone kind of realize that Wesley is not doing well. It's kind of like he's hiding something. But then we are given another piece of the origin to Mr. Negative. And we learn here that after he had technically built this alliance with the Kingpin, well, for his sister, she hated the idea of what he did. She found it so disgusting, so wrong, that she slapped him and then abandoned him. She left the empire that they had built together. Now, that part right there, it's really important. And the reason why, because, well, you do have Mr. Negative being able to use this moment as a way to kind of sit down and talk to Wesley to learn more about the idea of Mysterio and the different members of the council who make up Mysterio, like Gwen Stacy. Now, here's the thing, because in the present day, we're now seeing this meeting happening between all the different members of, well, Mysterios. And at first we thought like, okay, cool, this should be a regular meeting. But Wesley is very quiet. Now, there was one member to the council where a lot of people have believed that it was like Wilson Fisk's wife who had joined the Mysterios as a way to bring him down. No. That young lady right there is actually the sister to Mr. Negative. She's alive still, but also still trying to chase for power, but now a more magical way. But the thing is, once she looks at James, she understands the look he has right now. She knows that James is being controlled by her brother. And we also learn here that for Mr. Negative, he kind of felt like this was the right time to make his move. And so he has sent out soldiers to go after the other members of the Sinister Six, to go after Spider-Man, to possibly go after Green Goblin as well. But to end this issue right here, when it comes to James, who's right now part of this Mysterio meeting, he has a bomb around his body. And so the bomb goes off, and we're kind of left to believe that every single member of the Mysterios have all been killed off, including Gwen Stacy. And so as we get into Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 22, we pick up with a Spider-Man at the moment going out of their way to get takeout. Now, the reason why I say a Spider-Man, because in this reality, there are at least two Spider-Men, Peter Parker and his son, right? And so as the opening pages go on, we see the Spider-Man get takeout and they head to this underground bunker. And we see the Spider-Man going over to Mary Jane and her daughter. So I'm kind of like, okay, cool, it's Peter Parker, but the suit is new, and it does look like a combination of two different suits, Superior Spider-Man, and also got vibes from Spider-Man video game as well. But then we kind of find out that this Spider-Man is not Peter Parker nor Richard Parker, it's Otto Octavius. So now we have our ultimate superior Spider-Man. Now, we're not flat out told, like, okay, how in the world did Otto Octavius become the new Spider-Man? Now, the last chapter, it did show him having a spider in his lab, and that could be Jonathan Hickman saying, like, hey, that's all you need to know. He had that spider, and bam, just like that, he became Superior Spider-Man. But we see that right now, him, Mary Jane, her kids, Uncle Ben, JJ, Mole Man, and Otto Octavius, they're all right now in this underground bunker, just trying their best to survive and hoping the war will end very soon. Now, for Peter Parker and also Green Goblin, they're not there at the moment. But we also learn here that when it comes to Uncle Ben and JJ, they're getting very close into the idea of telling the world about the Kingpin, but also like the Maker as well. But getting over to Peter Parker and Green Goblin, we see those two characters at the moment fighting against, well, an army of bullseyes. Now, of course, this right here is not really major, the idea of fighting bullseyes, but it's also the idea of us seeing Green Goblin kind of dealing with the idea of Gwen Stacy no longer being around. We saw her get supposedly blown up. And so when you do have our two heroes being able to defeat this army of bullseyes, well, now it's time to go back to the base. But for Harry, he wants to stay behind and kind of figure out why were all these bullseye inside this building. And so for Peter Parker, he does go back over to the bunker. But for Harry, he stays behind. But right after Peter leaves, we did see somebody communicate with Harry Osborn. Now, for me personally, I thought it was his AI. Because remember, guys, when it came to the early days of Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter and Harry both got AIs. Now, for Peter AI, it's just Peter Parker all over again. But for Harry Osborn's AI, it was his father, Norman Osborn. And so when it comes to Harry, we see him being able to have a conversation with somebody who calls him his son. But now this is me saying like, okay, Jonathan Hickman is going to go ahead and drop small ideas that could be used as a way to help in the Ultimate Marvel universe. Because now we pick up with Otto Octavius. Now for Otto Octavius, what he wants to do is shut down the Maker in a way because he knows about the Maker, right? But for Otto Octavius, he had learned that for the Maker, there is this device that's being kept in the center of the world. That device is connected to other devices across the world, basically a network that's all connected to the city that the Maker had created. And so what Otto Octavius wants to do is find a way to shut down the network, to infect the network. But to do that, you got to find one of the devices that's part of the network. And so he already knows that the Kingpin, at least his base, should have one of those devices. The thing is, somebody got to break into the Kingpin's base. And that right there is pretty serious. Now, we see Otto talking to Richard Parker. And I'm kind of like, do not send Richard Parker in there and then possibly die or get grounded all over again because he's not following his parents' directions. No, for Otto Octavius, he wants Richard Parker to go meet up with Felicia, Black Cat, because she is a thief. She knows how to break into places. So why not get her to break into the base of the Kingpin and begin the idea of bringing down the network? Now, we also get this like brief moment where we see Mary Jane and Peter Parker being able to, show off their love for one another. But it's also the idea like Peter Parker has this feeling that something bad is about to happen. Now, technically, a lot of bad things had already happened, but he feels like something else is going to pop off very soon. And when it does, things are going to get a whole lot worse. And he's correct. But let's go ahead and get back over to Richard Parker, because we do see Richard Parker meeting up with Felicia Hardy, right? And once he does meet up with Felicia Hardy, it's her being told like, hey, this is what has to be done right now. We need somebody to break into that building and basically connect us to the Maker server to bring it down. Now, it's also her wanting to get revenge against Mr. Negative, because as we saw in the last chapter, that dude went wild and began to attack all the different people who are involved in this massive storyline. But also, we kind of got the idea that her father was killed off by Mr. Negative in one of the panels in the last chapter. But anyways, she does agree to help out Richard Parker, but we're not done yet, y'all. So let's go ahead and end this video on one heck of a cliffhanger. Because as a way to close on this book, we do switch over to Harry Osborn. Again, we thought Harry was talking to the AI again, right? No, he was not even talking to the AI. He was talking to this messed up version of Mysterio. And we kind of get the idea that all the different people who were part of the Mysterio Council have came together to make this one particular Mysterio. And so the book ends on that note. Guys, we only have 2 more issues left before Ultimate Spider-Man officially ends. But this is where we're going to end today. Okay, guys, so we are finally here. We are finally diving into the ending for Ultimate Spider-Man. And can I say, oh my God, I love this series so much. And I kind of wish it did continue on, but unfortunately, it's going to end for now, quotation marks. And so getting into issue number 23 to lead us into the final issue, we do pick up with Mary Jane and Peter Parker being very upset with Dr. Octavius. And the reason why, because for Dr. Octavius, he allowed Richard Parker to leave their secret base. Because right now, the whole Parker family, the whole Spider-Man family is like on watch. Like the Kingpin is trying to find them. But at the same time, for our heroes, they're trying to bring down the Kingpin, but also begin the process of trying to bring down the Maker as well. And so when it comes to Richard Parker, well, for Dr. Octavius, he had this device that had to be plugged into the system of the Kingpin. And so for Richard Parker, he left to meet up with Felicia Hardy, aka the Black Cat. Now, the Black Cat was working for the Kingpin, but her and Richard had kind of built this relationship with one another. And so the idea of him leaving to go work with her is kind of concerning, but at the same time, it's also him trying to break into the base of the Kingpin where he could possibly be killed. And so for Mary Jane and Peter, they're kind of like, why in the world did you let our son go? And for Doc Ock, he's kind of like, I was supposed to stop him. Like, he is not fully understanding what is the big issue. And so you have Peter say, I'm gone. You know what? Hand me the other device for you to plug in as well. But at the same time, I'm getting my son back. And it's Peter telling Doc Ock, we're going to talk later about this. And matter of fact, as we get into the next page, we do see Richard Parker with Felicia Hardy beginning the process of trying to break into the base of the Kingpin. Now, while you have those two doing that, for Uncle Ben and also J. Jonah Jameson, they're going to play this message. They only get like 3 times to play a message, and each time they only get 30 seconds. So they're trying to explain to the world like what is really going on when it comes to the Maker, when it comes to the Maker's Council, when it comes to the Kingpin. And so they're trying to make sure their message gets across the entire area. And so it's Doc Ock saying like, hey, 3 chances, each chance 30 seconds long. Let's get it going now. And so we see across the city, the message is being played. People are watching this. People are taking it in. People are kind of wondering like, what do they truly mean about the idea of the Kingpin, the Maker? What's going on? Now, while you have the Kingpin seeing this and getting very upset, y'all, let me say right now, you have my boy, Mr. Negative, walk into the room and this dude wants all the smoke. Like this man said, hey, you know what? You kind of forced me to kind of join your Sinister Six. I've been wanting revenge against you for a long time. And I kind of feel like this is the perfect time to do this. Now, for Kingpin, he's kind of wondering, how in the world do you get past all my different bullseyes? And we see that right now, for all the different bullseyes, they were kind of pulled away for a different reason. And right now, they're surrounding Harry Osborn, Green Goblin, and Gwen Stacy, and the Mysterio Council as well. And so while you have Mysterio and Green Goblin, you didn't have someone say, allow them inside, let them through. And so you have one bullseye, lead them to an office to have a meeting with another character. Now, while you have Kingpin, also, Mr. Negative wanting to fight against one another, that is when there's this loud boom sound. And it kind of stops both characters from fighting against one another. That same boom sound is also heard by Richard Parker. And for Richard Parker and Black Cat, they're trying to pass through all these different lasers to kind of get past security to the one room they have to enter, except because Richard Parker was not paying attention, unfortunately, he does trigger security in that room to now attack him and Felicia Hardy. And this kind of leads into issue number 24. We're not there yet, but once you do have Spider-Man arrive, for Mr. Negative and Kingpin, they call a truce, right? And so for Mr. Negative, his main goal right now is to go ahead and go after Richard Parker and allow Kingpin to deal with Spider-Man. And we also see here that for Mr. Negative, he also knows that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. So just like that, the secret is out. Almost everyone now knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Now, the idea of Mr. Negative, basically telling Spider-Man, I'm going to end your bloodline. I'm going to kill off Richard Parker. You have Peter just get so angry and begin to attack Mr. Negative. But you didn't have the Kingpin step in and say, nah, your attention should be on me, and throws Peter across the room, like clear as day across the room into a wall. Now, the fight between the Kingpin and Spider-Man, it does get pretty brutal. It's Kingpin and Spider-Man just going all out, but it's really more Kingpin winning the battle. But what I really want to focus on right now for a brief moment is Harry Osborn and Mysterio. And the reason why, because they're meeting up with Captain Britain. And while you have this meeting going on, Peter is calling out to Harry because Peter needs Harry's help. So the question is right now, who is Harry going to help out? Peter Parker or his wife, who's Mysterio right now, but not really Mysterio all the way, because, it does seem like all the different Mysterios are right now in one body. And so you have the AI of Norman Osborn kind of ask Harry the question, who are you going to help out? Your wife or the better man who's up there right now fighting for his life, Peter Parker? Who are you going to choose? And so this leads into the final part of issue number 23, getting into issue number 24, because you do have Kingpin, Mr. Negative, believe that Peter Parker is dead, or at least defeated for right now, and then go ahead and move on to Richard Parker. But then you have Peter get right back up. He's kind of like, nah, round two, because this is a man right now who wants to protect his family no matter what. Now, as you get into the final issue of Ultimate Spider-Man, the battle does continue on between Kingpin and Spider-Man, but you have Peter Parker realize what he has to do. Get rid of Mr. Negative, because Mr. Negative is basically forcing Peter to not fight back, allowing the Kingpin the chance to, beat down on Peter Parker. And so you have Peter with enough willpower fight against the control of Mr. Negative, shoot some webs, pull him over right when the Kingpin is trying to throw a punch, knocking out Mr. Negative, and now allowing Peter to somewhat have a fair battle against the Kingpin. Now, while you have those two characters battling against one another, but now we kind of get into the creation of Anti-Venom here. And it's kind of cool because, guys, remember, when it comes to Richard Parker, he doesn't really have any powers. It's a suit right now giving him the ability to be Spider-Man. And sometimes when it tries to protect Richard, it goes in this Venom mode. And so we see the security system of Kingpin being able to hack into Richard's suit and copying the system and creating his own anti-venom robots to fight against Richard and also Black Cat. And they're still trying to get inside the main room to begin the process of helping them defeat the Kingpin. Now, something else we have to remember is that when it came to Doc Ock, before Peter left to go chase down Richard, he gave Peter another thing to plug in. This thing is a tad bit different. It allows Peter to shut down the enhancement Kingpin has in his body to allow Peter a better chance to win the battle against Kingpin. The problem is that you didn't have Peter get hit right in the chest, sending the device flying across the room. And so what we're seeing now is really more of Peter Parker trying to rush over to his son. So like Peter Parker is able to use Doc Ock device to bring down the enhancement Kingpin has, but also being able to run over to his son. Now, while trying to do that, it's Richard Parker in his suit trying their best to bring down all these different anti-venoms that are currently attacking them. Now, Richard Parker does abandon his suit behind to run over to the computer screen to plug in Doc Ock's device. And so by the time Peter gets there, he is lucky because he does find his son alive, but also kissing Felicia Hardy. So Richard Parker officially now has a girlfriend, but also our heroes were able to win. So this kind of leads into the ending of the storyline because we do pick up with Mysterio making a deal with Captain Britain. Now we switch over to Kingpin and also Mr. Negative. This is where you have Kingpin inform us that thanks to Mysterio's deal with Captain Britain, this area now belongs to Mysterio, no longer Kingpin. Now for Kingpin, it's him saying like, it's okay because I will once again work my way back up to where I was earlier. So like, I'm ready for this new challenge in the world. Now for Mr. Negative, he's kind of like, no. I came here to kill you. And I kind of realized something. With you losing everything around you, your willpower should be a tad bit weak, allowing me to control you. And so you have Mr. Negative tell Kingpin to jump. Now, Kingpin does jump. At the very last second, though, he turns back and grabs the edge of the building and then grabs Mr. Negative. Now, again, for Mr. Negative, he still believes that he's more strong in willpower to force the Kingpin to let go and just fall to his death. Kingpin's kind of like, no, if I'm going to die, you're coming down with me. And both characters drop to their death. So just like that, Kingpin, Mr. Negative, off the board. You have J. Jonah Jameson and Uncle Ben being able to report on it. Now, they're kind of wondering, should they go ahead and retire? And of course, with these two guys, they're not going to retire at all. So like, that's kind of cool to see. But we did switch over to Harry and Gwen Stacy because we come to find out again, yes, this area now belongs to Mysterio. Now remember guys, there's a whole council of Mysterio, but thanks to an earlier attack, all their minds kind of merged together into one. And so it's like 1/5 of the mind belongs to one person who's part of the council. And so for Harry's kind of wondering like, what does this mean for you and I, Gwen? Like, can we continue on as husband and wife? And basically you have Mysterio say no, because it's no longer just Gwen Stacy in there. It's now all the different members of the council. Now it's also Harry has to hear the AI of his father once again talk down on him. And so for Harry, he's like, you know what? Enough is enough. Because after his meeting with his wife, he does go back over to the lab of Doc Ock to talk to Peter Parker about the idea of having Doc Ock shut down the AI system that basically acts like his father. Because now is Harry realizing that he has to move on from his past. It's now a new beginning for him as well. Now, it's also Harry kind of wondering, what motivate Peter to just keep going on? Because for Peter, in a 2-year window of Ultimate Spider-Man, he has gone through a lot. What in the world motivates him to keep pushing forward to hopefully achieve the goals that he was trying to achieve? So this kind of leads into a flashback. Now, for me personally, it's kind of like Jonathan Hickman kind of pointing something out. Like, this is what fans want to see back in the main Marvel universe. Peter Parker and Mary Jane being together again, but it's the love they have for one another. Let me explain, because it's Mary Jane announcing that she's pregnant. Like, they're just two kids in college who are not married yet, don't have a lot of money, but she is pregnant. And they're kind of wondering, what is the right move to make here? And so we see the two of them in their love just pull them together and say, no matter what, we're going to be together. Like, I'm here for you. You're here for me. Yes, we're scared right now, but together we can achieve greatness and be great parents. And it does lead to the idea of saying, like, we should go ahead and get married. Now, of course, they do a courthouse marriage before going home to tell Aunt May, Uncle Ben, like, hey, by the way, haha, you're going to be a grandparent because we have a child in the way. Like, it's them showing how strong their love is, that they're overcoming all the different fears and obstacles that comes in a relationship. And so as we do switch back over to the present day, see the Parkers getting back to their apartment. Now, when they do, you have Mary Jane ask the question like, okay, so is it safe for us to now come back home? Now, for Peter, he says yes. And the reason why, because Gwen told Harry told Peter, like, as long as they don't cross Mysterio, everyone is protected. This is now Mysterio's area, but they're also kind of wondering of the possibility of future attacks to come down the road. And so for the time being, they're going to stay somewhere else. Now, luckily for them, someone's girlfriend, Richard Parker's girlfriend, Felicia, has a lot of money and will give them like $1 million to kind of help them out for the time being. But you also have Peter explain like what he kind of told Harry. And he says, like, I had to tell Harry what he wanted to hear. But in reality, hearing that question made me realize what kept me going, what motivated me. And it's not just Mary Jane. It's the entire family, his son, his daughter. It's the people he loves. Uncle Ben, that keeps him going. And the book ends on that note right there with the Parker family just standing together. I'm like, man, it has to end on that note. That's wild. But honestly, a great ending. And so with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.